Hey ANPers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is ANP1 Lecture Test 5, Video 21, covering page 22 of the note set. I am going to attempt it with the visuals again, just to check maybe it'll record. If not, we will re-record this without the video. Alright, so this is top of page 22 as it reads in my note set, the blood-brain barrier, as we've talked about before. The neural tissue in the CNS is isolated from general circulation by the blood-brain barrier. General circulation means the bloodstream, as opposed to arterial circulation, which is the blood in the arteries, and venous circulation, which is the blood in the veins. Some things that can diffuse across the blood-brain barrier. And those will be things like carbon dioxide and oxygen gas, ammonia, lipids such as steroids, prostaglandins, and small alcohols. So, small list there. And the lipids diffuse across the cell membrane because the cell membrane is lipids, and lipids are lipid soluble. And so they just diffuse through like nothing's there. It's like, well, if you put oil and water together, what happens? They separate out. But what if you mix a little olive oil in with your regular vegetable oil? It mixes right in. They're the same. They're both fat soluble. Okay. Hydrophobic. How do water and ions cross the blood-brain barrier? Through membrane channels, because they cannot diffuse through the cell membranes. What is the blood-CSF barrier? It's just like the blood-brain barrier, but it's specific to the CSF. And it keeps compounds from general circulation out of the CSF, and for largely the same reason. A number of hormones are also active as neurotransmitters. So if the hormones got into the synaptic clefts, they would bind to the chemically gated ion channels on the postsynaptic membranes and cause havoc. So, the antibiotic tetracycline can cross the blood-brain barrier, but sulfa drugs cannot. I gotta write that down for you. I can't pronounce the names of the sulfa drugs, but I have the spelling written down here. So, sulfasoxazole, sure. Sulfasoxazole and sulfadiazine. There we go, sulfa drugs. That's an N. All right, so if you have a bacterial infection in your brain and your doctor prescribes tetracycline, what do? Well, you get a new doctor. Tetracycline does not cross the blood-brain barrier, which means it will not get into your brain. So, no, you need a sulfa drug for that. Next, the medulla oblongata. So here's the pons that makes this the medulla oblongata. See if we have a picture on the next slide. Do we have a next slide? There we go. The medulla oblongata, which is this chunk right here, is the most inferior of the brain regions. It's the third part of the brain stem. The brain stem is, of course, the pons, the medulla oblongata, and no. I'm having a brain fart. The midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Oh, criminy. And we're not learning all of the nuclei in the midbrain. We're going to cover a number of them next semester for 2402 as we get there. Pons, I'm not sure why pons is after the medulla oblongata, given that it's, above. The pons is linked to the cerebellum. It links the cerebellum, which is behind it, to the midbrain, the diencephalon, the cerebrum, and the spinal cord. Same thing on the nuclei. They're really quite fascinating, but we don't have time. The midbrain, also called the mesencephalon. The corpora quadrigemini, which is these 4 bumps right here are the corpora, and of course corpus means body, like Corpus Christi. Corpora is the plural. And quad means 4, and there's 4 bumps. And the Gemini are the twins, and these are 4 bumps that are twins. Let's see, the top 2 bumps of the corpora quadrigemini are the superior colliculi. So one superior colliculus is one of the top 2 bumps. Both of them are the superior colliculi. 1 colliculus, 2 colliculi. And it does reflex control of response to light and movement. So if you see a bright light out of the corner of your eye, your instinct is to turn to it to see what it is, mostly to see if it's going to kill you or not. These instincts are to protect us. If you imagine a prehistoric world, bright light is fire. So you need to know where the fire is. Well, if it's at night, of course. During the day, we'll assume it's the sun, in which case it shouldn't be like just showing up. Daylight? Sunrise? Unless you're in the trees and it's like dappled sunlight, that's always fun. The inferior colliculus does reflex control of response to auditory stimuli. So the inferior colliculus does sounds. You hear a loud noise, you turn your head to it. You hear your name, you turn your head to see who's calling you. Okay, so these are cranial reflexes because they're reflexes in the brain. Cerebral peduncles are these things. Let's see, are they labeled? Here's one of the cerebral peduncles. Here are the cerebral peduncles. They're these bits that look like tree trunk. Cerebral peduncles. Those are cerebellar peduncles. Cerebral peduncles are these kind of tree trunk lines under cranial nerve 4. And you do need to know the cranial nerves for the lab test. It'll look kind of like this and then point to the cranial nerves, and you'll have to give both the name and the Roman numeral. I don't need you to type in the word N, but the Roman numeral and the name for sure. Okay, cerebral peduncles, ventrolateral surface of the midbrain. These are descending tracts, so these are motor commands coming down from the brain. Either somatic or visceral, 2 kinds of motor. The midbrain also contains reticular activating system, the RAS, and it functions to monitor alertness and attentiveness, and mine is not working today. To be fair, I haven't had any coffee, so that'll do it. So I'm trying to keep this short and not talk because I'm hopeful that by using less memory, these will actually record the video along with the audio. So thank you as always for tuning in. I appreciate your patience. Dr. J out. I don't know if that worked. Let's try that again.